The Secret of the Golden Attic. Once upon a time, in ancient times, hundreds of years ago, in the land of China, there lived 4 friends: Sing, Prung, Cao, and Mao. Mao was nicknamed White Mao because his face was extremely white. These 4 friends had no family or relatives, and each of them lived alone in this world. Therefore, they decided to live together and become loyal friends. White Mao was a kind and brave young man who loved doing good for people. However, Sung and Peng had a strong inclination toward evil, while Cao was torn between good and evil. Sung and Peng decided to form a gang for theft, saying, "This is the fastest way to make money and achieve wealth and fortune." But White Mao strongly refused. As for Cao, he hesitated. He wanted money, but he knew that stealing was wrong. Sung and Peng insisted on forming the gang and eventually convinced Cao to join them. But White Mao confronted them, saying, "Would you like a thief to enter our home and steal from us?" They all responded, "No, we would never allow that." White Mao then asked, "Then why do you want to steal other people's money and belongings?" They could not answer. He firmly told them, "I will never participate in this evil act." Then he left them and walked away. The conspiracy against Mao. The 3 Sung, Peng, and Cao sat together thinking, "What should we do?" Sung said, "The first thing we must do is get rid of White Mao so he won't expose us." Peng, with a sly grin, said, "I have thought about this carefully and devised the perfect plan to get rid of him." Curious, Cao asked, "Tell us about this plan, Peng." Peng explained, "Cao, you will go find White Mao and tell him that we have changed our minds because stealing is wrong, and we have decided to look for honest work. Then, in the morning, a man named Sonar will come and say something that will make us get rid of Mao forever." Cao asked in surprise, "And how do you know this person, Sonar, will come in the morning?" Peng laughed mischievously and said, "Because I arranged everything with him." Cao went to find White Mao. When he found him, he told him that everyone had agreed with his words. Mao was overjoyed and deeply relieved. The next morning, they woke up to loud knocking on the door. A strange man was banging on the door forcefully. Peng opened the door and asked, "Who is it?" The man responded loudly, "I am Sonar." Feigning ignorance, Peng asked, "And who are you?" The man proudly replied, "I am Sonar, famous as fire on a flag. I know secrets and news, and I have spent an entire year searching for a good man who hates thieves and evildoers." Then he described the man he was looking for. "He is 8 spans tall, his skin is as white as daylight, his hair is red and yellow, shining like fire, and he has a mark on his arm that looks like a small leaf from a tree." Peng, pretending to be surprised, asked, "And what do you want from him?" Sonar replied, "That is a secret I can only reveal to him, but on one condition. His name must have 3 letters, and the first one must be M." Cao turned to White Mao and said, "All these descriptions match you, Mao. Come on, go meet him and find out what he wants." When Sonar saw him, he shouted loudly and knelt before him respectfully, saying, "My great lord, what is your name?" Mao, puzzled, answered, "My name is Mao." Sonar exclaimed excitedly, "Yes, yes, 3 letters, and the first one is M. I have finally found you. The sorcerer of the Amber Lands has tasked me with finding you because only you possess the magic word that can open the golden cave." Then he pulled out a golden box and said, "This box contains 100 enchanted pills. Whenever you face a problem, take 1 pill, and you will find a solution immediately." White Mao was convinced to travel to the Amber Lands. His friends prepared a strong, beautiful, golden horse for him and supplied him with food, water, money, and weapons for self-defense. Then they bid him farewell, and he set off on his journey into the unknown. The truth is revealed. But as soon as White Mao disappeared from sight, Sung, Peng, and Cao burst into laughter. Peng looked at Sonar and said, "You played your role perfectly, Sonar." Sung laughed and added, "Yes, I almost believed the story myself. You are a great actor, Sonar." Sonar chuckled and said, "And just like that, you've gotten rid of Mao forever. You will never see him again because he will never return from the Amber Lands." Cao said, "But the enchanted pills in the golden box might help him overcome his troubles. He could go, obtain the treasure, and return." Sonar laughed and said, "Those pills are poisonous, my friend. Just one of them is enough to kill a giant elephant." Cao felt sorrowful his eyes filled with tears, and he said, "Poor Mao. He was a kind man who loved helping others. He didn't deserve such a cruel fate. May God have mercy on you, Mao." Sung said, "Forget about Mao now. We've gotten rid of him. Let's form the gang and start our path to wealth and fortune."
The brave knight Mao mounted his strong golden horse and set off, galloping swiftly across the land toward the Amber Lands, a place he had never heard of before, as described to him by sonar. For 7 days, he traveled from one town to another, riding by day. When the sun began to set, he would search for a cave or a cavern to spend the night, staying away from the eyes of thieves and bandits who emerged under the cover of darkness. On the 8th day, at sunset, Mao searched for a cave or shelter for the night, but found none. He continued riding, hoping to find a suitable place to rest. However, in the distance, he saw a thick cloud of dust rising, blocking the horizon. Through the dust, he could make out countless shadowy figures of galloping horses, charging forward at a terrifying speed. Mao immediately realized that this was a dangerous gang of bandits. He needed to hide. Looking around, he found only 3 massive trees standing close together. Quickly, he dismounted his horse, climbed the middle tree, and concealed himself among its thick branches and leaves, watching as the cloud of dust approached. He waited to see who these bandits were and what they would do. The gang arrived at the trees. There were many of them. They spotted Mao's horse wandering alone and were impressed by its strength and beauty, so they seized it and presented it to their leader. The leader began searching through Mao's belongings, which were carried by the horse. He found the golden box, upon which was inscribed in golden letters, 100 enchanted pills. 1 pill will give you the strength of a lion and solve all your problems. The leader let out a loud, sinister laugh and said to his men, "This is a great gift and an incredible surprise. There are 100 enchanted pills, and there are 99 of you, plus me, making 100. Each one of us will take a pill, and we will all gain the strength of 100 lions. No one will be able to stand in our way anymore."
Mao watched as the gang leader handed out a pill to each of his men. The darkness deepened, making it impossible for Mao to see or hear what happened next. He spent the night high up in the tree, making sure not to make a sound, lest the bandits discover his presence. The night felt endless, like an entire year, but he endured and reassured himself. Everything comes to an end. No matter how long the night is, the morning must come.
Finally, dawn began to break. Mao waited until the golden rays of the sun filled the sky. He saw the bandits lying motionless beneath the tree. He remained patient, hoping they would wake up and leave so he could descend and continue his journey. But time passed, the sun rose higher in the sky, and yet none of them woke up.
Mao was deeply puzzled. Despite their large number, not a single one had moved in their sleep, not even the usual tossing and turning of slumbering men. He watched as his golden horse approached one of the sleeping bandits, nudging him with its head and tugging at his clothes. But the man did not wake up. Mao's astonishment grew. He cautiously climbed down from the tree, staying hidden among the leaves. As he drew closer to the bandits, a chilling shiver ran through his body. He saw a strange green stain around each man's mouth, and some of them had their tongues hanging out. At that moment, he realized all the bandits were dead. Every single one of them.
Mao looked at the golden box and found it open and completely empty. Then he started counting the bandits and discovered there were 100 of them. He realized that the 100 pills inside the box had killed them all. A shiver ran through his body as he thought about how he himself was supposed to take those pills. He thanked God for saving him and for wiping out this terrifying gang. After deep thought, he understood that the story of the Golden Cave and the Sorcerer of the Amberlands was nothing but a plot devised by Sung and Bing to get rid of him, as he had opposed forming the gang. He thanked God once more, then began examining the possessions of the fallen bandits. He found their horses loaded with countless treasures, artifacts, and jewelry. His astonishment grew even more when he noticed that these artifacts bore the name of the Bisan Kingdom and the emblem of its summer palace. Mao realized that the gang had taken advantage of the palace's low security, since the king did not reside there, and had attacked it, killed the guards, and stolen its treasures. He looked at the scattered horses, gathered them, and tied them into groups. Then he mounted his strong horse, intending to lead them back to the king's palace. However, he did not know the way to the palace or the kingdom's capital. After some thought, he decided to follow the direction from which the bandits had come, hoping it would lead him to the summer palace. His intuition proved correct, for just before sunset, he arrived at the palace, where he found one of the guards still alive. He asked the guard to guide him to the king's residence in the capital.
Upon reaching the capital, Mao found the soldiers gathered, preparing to pursue the gang. He requested an audience with the king and recounted everything that had happened. The king was impressed by his bravery and honesty, but was shocked when Mao mentioned the Amber Lands. The king said to him, "There is no place called the Amber Lands. The path Sonar the Wicked described to you leads only to a forest filled with ferocious beasts. You would not have survived, but God saved you because you are a good man who helps others." Then the king looked at Mao and said, "You are brave, strong, and honorable. I offer you a place by my side, to become my minister and commander of my army. I will bestow upon you the highest honors, grant you a palace next to mine, and give you 1,000 bags of gold every month. What do you say?" Mao could hardly believe what he was hearing. He rubbed his eyes to make sure he wasn't dreaming. The king noticed his hesitation and said, "If 1,000 bags of gold are not enough, I will make it 1,300. Mao quickly shook his head and said, No, 1,000 bags are more than enough. I am at your service in whatever you command." The king ordered his heralds to announce Mao's appointment as minister and commander of the army. Celebrations erupted in the capital, and the people rejoiced, for the 100 bandits, the terror of cities and villages, had been defeated.
Mao lived happily in the Kingdom of Bisan, thanking God every day. He would say to himself, "All of this is by God's grace, not by my own power. To truly thank God, words of gratitude are not enough. I must show my gratitude through action." Thus, Mao began searching for the oppressed to bring them justice, the needy to give them aid before they even asked, and the oppressors to put them in their place. He would tell his men, "We must seek out those in need and help them, even if they don't ask. Many people don't know how to reach us, but we must know how to reach them. This is our duty before God." The people loved Mao, and peace and security prevailed in the land. However, some of the high-ranking officials of Bisan were filled with envy and hatred toward him. They conspired to get rid of him and went to the king, saying, "We are happy to have Mao in our land, but we want him to prove his true bravery by slaying the fearsome lion that lives on the outskirts of the capital. The beast attacks villages and farms at will. He should face it with nothing but a double-edged staff. Only then will we know if he is truly the champion of champions." The king had great faith in Mao's courage, so he ordered him to confront the lion. Mao could not refuse the king's command, but he felt that his end was near. Resigning himself to fate, he placed his trust in God and said to himself, "I put my faith in God."
Mao mounted his horse, took his staff, and set off toward the forest where the fearsome lion lived on the outskirts of the capital. As he neared the forest, the monstrous lion saw him and let out a tremendous roar that shook the earth. Mao's horse panicked and leaped in terror, throwing him to the ground before bolting away in fear. Mao watched in horror as the terrifying lion charged toward him. With no other option, he spotted a massive green tree nearby. Overcome with fear, he leaped toward it, shouting, "O Lord!" He clung to one of its branches, desperately praying for salvation. The lion reached the tree and stood beneath it, raising its head with its monstrous mouth wide open, trying to reach Mao. Desperate to climb higher, Mao scrambled up the tree, but his staff slipped from his grasp, leaving him completely unarmed. To his astonishment, the sharp-ended staff fell directly into the lion's open mouth, piercing through its tongue and lodging into the roof of its throat. The lion could not close its mouth. The more it struggled to rid itself of the staff, the deeper it embedded, causing blood to pour from its wounds in agony. The lion roared ferociously, shaking the entire forest. Its deafening cries echoed across the capital, sending people running into their homes and locking their doors in fear. The beast writhed in pain, desperately trying to dislodge the staff, but to no avail. The struggle dragged on for hours. Mao, afraid of falling onto the wounded lion, took off his belt and tied himself to the tree, continuously praying for his safety. As the terrifying battle between the lion and death continued, the beast's strength finally began to wane. At last, it collapsed lifelessly onto the ground. Mao climbed down from the tree, prostrated in gratitude to God, then began his journey back to the city, utterly exhausted, barely able to walk.
On his way, he found the streets completely deserted. Everyone had locked themselves inside their homes, too afraid of the monstrous lion that had tormented them for so long. When Mao arrived at the king's palace, he called out to the guards, who had barricaded themselves inside a fortified chamber. He ordered them to open the gates and then proceeded to the king's court, where he found the king surrounded by princes and high-ranking officials. Mao announced that the fearsome lion was dead. The king's face lit up with joy, but some officials were skeptical and said, "Is it possible that Mao killed the terrifying lion with nothing but a short staff barely a meter long?" Mao invited them to mount their horses and ride with him to the forest to see the truth for themselves.
A grand procession set out, led by the king and his minister, accompanied by high-ranking officials, hundreds of soldiers and guards, still fearful that the lion might be alive. When they reached the forest and saw the enormous beast lying dead on the ground, they could hardly believe their eyes. They marveled at how Mao had slain the monstrous lion with such a small staff. The king ordered his soldiers to gather several strong carts to transport the lion's corpse back to the city for the people to witness. However, the beast's massive size made it impossible to move, so they left it where it lay. Crowds of people flocked in successive processions to see the downfall of the terrifying creature that had haunted their lives like a dreadful nightmare.
Mao became a national hero in the Kingdom of Bisan, and grand celebrations were held in his honor throughout the land. Parents named their newborn sons Mao, and if a daughter was born, they called her Maoya. The king then declared that he had chosen Mao as the husband for his daughter, Princess Shams Al-Nahar, and decreed that he would succeed him as king. Time passed, and after the king's death, Mao ascended the throne of Bisan. He ruled with justice and compassion, always searching for those in need and solving their problems before they even reached his court.
One day, Mao sat with his wife, Queen Shams Al-Nahar, and began recounting his story from the very beginning. How he had lived in his homeland with Sung, Bing, and Cao, how they had invited him to form a gang of thieves, and how, when he refused, they conspired with Sonar to eliminate him.
The queen listened in amazement and said, "God saved you and rewarded you well because you are kind, brave, and deserving of all good. But what became of your old companions, Sung, Bing, and Cao, after you left them on your way to the Amber Lands that never existed?"
Mao replied, "I do not know, Shams Al-Nahar, but I truly wish to learn what became of them and what fate awaited them." Determined to uncover their fate, King Mao decided to disguise himself as a merchant and set out with his most loyal companions on a journey to the lands of Sung, Bing, and Cao.
Queen Shams Al-Nahar asked her husband, King Mao, to allow her to travel with him. She joined him in a merchant caravan loaded with the finest silks and the best types of incense, and together, they set off toward the lands of China, searching for the lost friends. The caravan stayed in China for an entire month, selling all the silk and incense they had brought and purchasing many Chinese goods in return. During this time, Mao and his companions tirelessly searched for his old friends, Sung, Bing, Cao, and Sonar, but no one knew anything about them and they could not find a single trace.
After a long and fruitless search, Mao decided to return to Bisan with his caravan. However, he remained troubled until Shams Al-Nahar said to him, "There is one place you haven't searched yet, my dear Mao." Mao asked, "Where, Shams Al-Nahar?"
She replied, "You once said they wanted to form a gang of thieves. So why don't you inquire about them at the Hall of Justice, where news of thieves and criminals is always known?" Visiting the Hall of Justice. Mao was convinced by her words and went to the Hall of Justice, where he shared his story about Sung, Bing, Cao, and Sonar, requesting any information about them. The officials brought out a large collection of criminal records and asked if he recognized any of the individuals.
Mao examined the pictures one by one, but his face grew sorrowful as he noticed that all the men depicted were disfigured. Some had lost a hand, others had only one eye, and some bore large scars on their faces. He whispered to himself, "The path they chose could only lead to misery and suffering. Praise be to God for saving me from such a fate." A painful discovery. Suddenly he cried out, "I found them. These are all of them." He handed the image to the director of the Hall of Justice and asked about their fate. After searching the records, the director said, "Two of them were killed in a battle with the police, and the third died in prison." Mao's heart filled with sorrow, but he thanked the director and returned to Bisan with his caravan, carrying Chinese goods. Upon his arrival, he distributed all the caravan's merchandise among the poor and needy, building a just and prosperous nation.
Shams Al-Nahar said to him, "Mao, we must ensure that no one in our land is poor or in need, so that all people may live in happiness and security."
Mao agreed with her, and after deep thought, he decided to establish a council of wise men in the Kingdom of Bisan. The council would consist of 50 individuals chosen by the people to assist the king in solving the country's problems. For the first time, Bisan held nominations and elections, allowing the citizens to select 50 scholars, experts, and intellectuals to form the council. The council convened with King Mao, and after careful planning, they decided to utilize Bisan's vast forests to establish a massive timber factory and train the locals in furniture making. Expand the cultivation of mulberry trees and the breeding of silkworms, leveraging the people's expertise in high-quality silk production. Retain essential resources like wood, furniture, and silk for domestic needs while exporting the surplus to other nations. Cultivate large fields of wheat and staple crops to ensure food security for the people of Bisan year-round.
Establish a small workshop in every home, enabling women to produce advanced handmade crafts and small-scale industries. To facilitate this plan, a team of advisors was formed to visit homes, train women in various crafts, provide them with the necessary tools, and collect their finished goods for sale. Profits were then distributed among them while they remained in their homes.
Within a single year, the Kingdom of Bisan became one of the richest nations in the world. Every person had an important role to play. Children attended school. Men worked in fields and factories. Women and girls contributed to small-scale industries from their homes. Unemployment disappeared entirely, and theft became a thing of the past. There were no longer any thieves, gangs, or bandits in Bisan. The people thanked God for these blessings, for their wise and just King Mao, and for the council of wise men who helped bring about this prosperity. Together, they joyfully proclaimed, "Praise be to God, Lord of all worlds." The end.